Hello. I'd like to thank the attendees for today. It's July 26th. And what happened during the meeting today is about halfway through, I discovered I forgot to hit the record button. And to keep everyone up to speed, it's important that we have the ability to share with you what happened at all of these meetings. And we've decided they're these meetings for construction estimating on the moon study. And so we decided the second Friday and fourth Friday of every month, just for the next, say, couple months, through the white paper side. Then we'll reevaluate what the next steps are and where we go from there. Because everyone's real busy, it's important that obviously sometimes you can't make a meeting, but we want to give you the opportunity to review and not get left behind. So as I mentioned today at the meeting, that if you do miss a meeting, it really is going to be important that that you do review, at least just kind of stream through very quickly or so to get up to speed. Otherwise, it's just we lose momentum and the brain knowledge starts to deteriorate a little bit. We need everybody's help. That's why you're on the team. All 36 folks are great thinkers in the industry from all sides, and academia, private sector, public sector, and you're on the team because you have a passion, and you're a great thinker and contributor in the industry. And that's something we all share in common. It's great to collaborate with such amazing, passionate people in the industry. It's just a kick. So let's go ahead and review the agenda really quick. And again, my apologies, I didn't hit the record button, but you won't hear I won't repeat my bad jokes and stuff. Just kidding, I didn't do any jokes. Okay, first one is, what is the structure and timing of the white paper? How to provide input and peer review, that's number two. We'll talk about the next two meetings: data room, contribution, knowledge area leaders, and input, and why that's important for lens thinking. Example of Dr. Steve Fehr with NASA. He asked a very intriguing question at one of the meetings, and it just snowballed within the theory group, of how important this concept is, which we'll go over very, very quickly, and a brief overview of the 11 sections of the white paper. The goal is that this is only going to be about a half an hour, maybe actually it'd probably be 40 minutes, but our meetings are going to be fairly short. All right. So I'll just kind of slam through this very quickly. Thank you for watching this video, and it will keep you up to speed for the next one. All right. Number one, what is the structure and timing of the white paper? So the white paper, we've decided, is going to be no more. We're going to try to keep it to a maximum of 10 pages, which is going to be a challenge, but it's doable. And the timing is in 3 weeks, we'll have a draft. Now, let me remind everyone that that's behind me here, this is a lot of information from a lot of people, from all sides of the industry. This is a lot of input. And although I'm presenting it, I know I say this a lot, but it's really important. Even though I'm presenting this because I'm kind of collecting and we're, kind of funneling the information into a unified theory, there are many people involved in this. And so what that means is that the white paper, I'll do the initial writing on this. Otherwise, it's just, there's going to be so many people writing, and to keep the continuity level together is going to be very difficult. It'll just add a tremendous amount of time. So we've decided I'll write the white paper, which the board's been poked at for months, and it's like a think tank of all of our comments and conferences and things that we've been doing. And then we'll have a discussion and peer review. Now, if you are involved in peer review, serious peer review, like you read the paper and you give input, your name will be on the white paper. This isn't um, we want to make sure that everyone that has contributed to this massive work, we get acknowledged for it. So just know that. So the timing is 3 weeks, peer review about 2 weeks, rewrite maybe 2 weeks, and then perhaps publishing. We have many sources of publishing, so that will not be a problem. But after the white paper, we'll probably have a meeting with the core group, which we a couple NASA folks, and Johns Hopkins, Jabu Abraham with Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, and a couple core research folks here internally, and then we'll decide, okay, what's the next step of implementation and things of that nature. So, okay. How do you provide input? Well, very simply, by the next meeting, or the third, when we're ready for peer review, which will be in 3 weeks, we'll have a form and a website through the data room that you can access, and you fill out and it just gives how to give a peer review, just so we're kind of approaching it the same manner. And we're really going to be pushing for honesty and being realistic, but really thinking out of the box. No lackadaisical thought is going to be useful to the team. So just want to emphasize that. So we'll keep it kind of structured as far as, well, what's the approach and process for peer review? Okay. So let's talk about the next two meetings. So the next meeting will be the second Friday in August, and it's time to really to go over the theory in detail. Now, if you haven't seen the last meeting we had a couple of weeks ago, where the CSU Fresno hosted, then please take a look at that, because it does start with the theory, and it does give you a lot of information. It talks about how you use the data room, and which is very important. And we're going to try to keep these meetings an hour or less, and I think we're making them 45 minutes. I think on the theory one, that's going to get a little long. So I don't know exactly how to approach that. I'll talk to a couple colleagues, and maybe we can, because we can't keep that to 45 minutes. The problem is we have East Coast and Pacific Coast and everything in between. And so, 2:30 on Pacific time is on a Friday is 5:30 on a Friday in the East Coast. And that's, we all know that's not optimum for thinking. So we'll come up with some. We'll kind of think about that. But so the next meeting will be theory. Then the meeting after that, the fourth Friday, will be actually peer review session. So we'll have a draft paper, and we'll dive into a peer review process. Okay, data room. I'd like to thank Ann Liu. As I mentioned today in the meeting, she's a student at University Davis, civil and environmental engineering, and she's interning for the Institute for Construction Innovation. By the way, she also was independent research for the last quarter at UC Davis, and her job was to help us get organized, and she's been doing a great job. And her and one of her colleagues will be joining us again in research. They get a couple like 4 units or 3 units, depending on how much time they can they do in their engineering schedules. And Anne is interning for the Institute for Construction Innovation Thought Consortium over the summer. She's doing a very good job. So please take a look at the data room. It's extremely important. And I won't go into the process. You can see that in the first meeting, but it is important to take a look at pretty much everything there. We've tried to organize it so you don't have to look around for things. We know everybody, time is a commodity for us. We're all managers or high level folks. Everybody on this team is, and we just don't have time. So we have to maximize our efficiency. If you need any help with the data room, please reach out to Anne. She's on the invites, Anne Liu at i4ci.org, or she's on all of the invites. I forgot her email. Okay. And contributing to the data room, very important. So in your travels, if you see a paper, you see a white paper, or you see an article or whatever, go ahead and you think it's relevant in the slightest, please get it over to us so we can start populating references. We can never have too much to take a look at. We'll go ahead and we'll go through it and distribute within where in the data room it should go. But again, review the first meeting if you weren't at that meeting, and we'll talk about the logistics of the data room. Knowledge area leaders needed for input in lens category thinking. We'll get into this a little more in depth when I go over the sections of the white paper tonight. But essentially what this means is this is a massive undertaking, a process and integration, and it can't literally be solved. The consensus is it can't be solved by one. It can't be solved in a silo. It's going to take all of our experience from the lens of which we see to address this challenge. And we'll talk about that again a little bit down the road. But all of us in this group are either with academia or private or public, but we all have different roles in the construction industry and aerospace and technology, even computer science. There's a couple in here that don't have construction experience, but they're computer program PhDs. And it will take that type of brain power to think of systemically, how do we approach this challenge? The next is I want to give an example. Oh, there's two X's here, and there's not two X's an example. I want to give an example of Steve Fehr, Dr. Steve Fehr with NASA. A couple meetings ago, he brought up a really fascinating point. Why I want to highlight this is because when people make comments and they have good question, it sparks debate. It sparks thought. It sparks, the energy of thought. And he was curious about return on investment and risk assessments and downstream causality of investments and things of that nature. And it was very fascinating because it made the research team start thinking about information and how important bits and pieces and micro and macro information and holistically and how valuable that is to not just maybe one entity within this whole process, but there are different teams within the whole larger process that would like different pieces of information. Now, what's interesting about this is that usually return on investments are typically a separate estimate that's done after or before, but they're done in a silo. And we're really thinking about maybe not solving how would we do, a return on investment a scenario, but having a conduit of data that would address things like that. And I'll get into it a little more detail when we get to the actual white paper categories. Next is a brief overview of the 11 sections, which is going over the categories. So if you if you don't recognize this and you don't recognize this, it means you haven't looked at, you didn't go to the meeting, or you didn't take a look at the last meeting that was recorded. And I would highly recommend that you would do that. Certainly before we go over the theory, because it would be very difficult to start from scratch. So you would have a lot of the team that's up to speed and some of them aren't. And we really need intense thought where everyone is moving and elevating as we move through this for efficient peer review. By the time we're getting peer review, I'm hoping that most people are up to speed on the theory, so you can poke at it and test it, and not physically test it, but mentally, and so it creates sparks thought and progression. All right, so there's 11 categories. First of all, there's a summary page. We're gonna try to keep it really hard. Again, it's gonna be tough. We're gonna keep it to 10 pages because no one's gonna read it if it's more than 10. And 10's even pushing it, but we're gonna try hard. But we'll have a summary, of course. So that will be page 1. So that only leaves us 9. So these are the 11 sections. Now this could be changed, and this may change as we kind of get into it and after we get through peer review. But let me just go through each section of the white paper. The first white paper will be what are the challenges for moon construction, and how do we estimate? What's the current state of estimating here on Earth? And why would that be problematic if we do the same thing that we do here on such an extreme condition, and so vital that we have our predictions much better than 98 or 97% of mega projects being substantially over budget and behind schedule. That obviously is unacceptable. So anyway, that just states the current state. All right, let's talk about 2. Now, this one will be important. Now, in the construction industry today, there's a lot of really great work going on with bringing the entire design team in early to think about costs for target value design and what have you. And so integrated project delivery, there's a lot of case study right now that we can really learn from. Many of us on this team of the 35 are on mega projects like $4.5 billion IPD projects, typically hospitals. And so there's a lot of expertise on this team. So early on, needs analysis, technologies, what type of technologies are being considered and how do we forecast such a complex projection of cost and time on technologies that may not be completely figured out yet. Now, we do this in hospital construction and very complex projects here on Earth, and we're getting better at it. But we do have to address this. Systems, infrastructure, how do the infrastructures interact with each other? Is it passive interaction or active interaction? Things of that nature. And so there's a lot of case study and a lot of really great things going on in the construction industry. And there's a lot of great minds working on this. And there's a benefit that the construction industry is proving out through a research and practical application of observation that there's a benefit of early involvement with systemically with the architects, engineers, and the builders and what have you. So that's something that we're going to address. Next is data room, data conduit concept. Now, this is the Dr. Steve Fehr with NASA. This is the one I'm talking about. And this is number three. To me, number three and number four are extremely important because it's a concept. So, so rough order or return on investment is for a very specific user group, let's say, a stakeholder. And this is one of many user groups or stakeholders that are going to need various pieces of information. So the concept we're thinking about right now is during the coding and the work breakdown structures, which are going to be very complex, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But we want to leave the concept of data conduits. In other words, we don't want to lock ourselves out where or the estimate's so rigid that we can't glean additional information that stakeholders need for very important reasons. And the example I gave this afternoon is, the traditional operating rooms, let's say, used to have, while you're doing your operation, if you needed it, while they're operating, they'd have to go to an MRI. They'd have to stabilize you, take you, your gurney and take you to the MRI machine, bring you back. And now that wasn't very efficient and also dangerous. And it also wasn't efficient on time. And there's a concept called hybrid ORs. It's been around for about 10 years or so. Hybrid ORs. And so what they'll do is hybrid OR has a tremendous amount of technology and everything is there. You don't have to move the patient. And Da Vinci robot that does the internal operation. So the doctor may not even be standing by the patient. But the whole OR has just, LED screens all the way around, and it's very impressive looking. But the point being is that the technology changes about every 5 years. And the old traditional way is we'd rip out an OR operating room in a hospital, which is not an easy thing to do, and have to upgrade everything, go through in the walls and change the infrastructure. Well, now we're much more hospitals, when they design them, they're much more careful about leaving room for growth. And this concept of data conduits, meaning we're leaving room for additional information that stakeholders need. We may not even know what that is yet, but we want to leave room in the coding for work breakdown structure and that type of verification process. We want to make sure that it's not a rigid system to a point that, if you need some information, whatever that is, there's no way you can get it because you have to, it's too rigid. We want an agile system. At least that's what we're thinking. All right, next, work breakdown structure. What are the units of measure? What are relevant, not relevant? As I mentioned this afternoon, we can count, literally, we can calculate the atoms in this pin, but it's irrelevant. And although we can do it, it doesn't mean we need to do it. But the trick is really how far down do we go? And I would argue pretty far down. Now remember, astronauts are let's just say $2 million a day. Production is not cheap, certainly on the moon. A lot of robots and the autonomous mechanisms will be doing a lot of the work, but things break down, things got to be fixed, there's maintenance, who knows? This is the construction means and methods teams have to kind of think that through. And how much is too much? How much is not enough? And the construction industry here on Earth is riddled with not enough. And typically the not enough information starts at the beginning. There was not enough to begin with. And we're too big in aggregate. And by the time you get to the very end, they don't talk. So our concept that we're doing is we're kind of matching the thing, symmetry of how everything talks to each other, beginning to end, and start to end. And then master estimate. Master estimate is there's one estimate, and that would be controlled by NASA, is the thought. And not only that, but the verification of that would be number 9, a verification with their G2 platform, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So that means NASA has control of not only the estimate, but also the verification and predictive state of this whole process. All right. So number 5 is master plan. Now, this is very similar to, hospital layouts, campuses, or university, or any type of campus. And I'll show you an example. If you go to this one here, and this is from a paper that, really good paper that Jabu Abraham with Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab gave us. He gave us a couple very groundbreaking papers that are in the primary reading, and the theory is very tight to those papers. Here's an example of a layout. Let me go back to the sheet here, of a phasing, or of a master plan design. It's very similar how things are laid out and what have you. So you have the master plan, then phasing. Do you build both landing and launch pads at the same time, or do you do the north one first or the second one, on and on? Of course, you would price, and then you would have to price those differently, of course. The roads, when do they go in? And so you have the phasing, but then you also have sequencing. So phasing would be north landing pad first, the west first, and the south, or what, so it was west and east. Yeah. But then within that construction, there would be sequencing as well. And so those are 2 very important things that the team has to understand at the very beginning. And that's done not in silos, but with the systemic team understanding what's going on. Estimating is not new to prediction or making assumptions. The only difference is these assumptions have to be very vast, and they also have to be very scientific in thought, and there needs to be accountability on everything. So anyway, that's the journey. Next, discovery phase. So discovery phase, what is the master estimate structures? There may be a different structure for habitat than there are for road, because the stakeholders may need to know different types of things, like mechanical and passive or active interaction, or integration, as opposed to roads may not need that layer of sophistication, or not sophistication, wrong word, but that type of feedback. Who knows? But it's something that we have to dive into and explore. And then direct or indirect interactions we talked about. And then what teams are in the queue for system development? Not all teams are just going to jump in and start designing right away. There's going to be an order of what teams are in the queue to go next, to start solidifying what type of technology and how it works and what have you. Now, what's really important, the other thing, is that we discussed today that we're not just going to show up on the moon and build the whole thing, where you have a couple habitat, and you have roads and excavation site, and conveyor, or however they do it, and landing on launch pad. It's in stages. And as NASA presenters have said at the spring conference that John Hopkins hosted, it goes in phases. You know, they'll settle on a technology, then they'll test the technology. Maybe you'll do a smaller project to begin with, things of that nature, and then you build up to actual massive production or larger production before you just go on the moon and just start putting your IKEA furniture together. Just kidding. But the point is that when these stages occur, it is imperative that we get feedback of what was the prediction and what actually happened. Because we have to have a system that gets smarter. So when we're predicting time and cost, we have historical costs, very articulated historical costs, so we can get smarter at every move that is made. Okay, lens of expertise. Let me see, stages. Stages are very important because what we're thinking is, you know, in design and construction, we have, you know, schematic design, DD, and 100% CDs and construction drawings, you know, things of that nature, and which we will, you know, I mean, presumably that will still be the case for Habitat. You know, you have your schematic drawings and design development and then your finished drawings. However, what we are kind of thinking right now is even within this, there are larger hierarchy phases, which is pre-launch, post-launch, deployment, which is, you know, launch, it's a payload in space, and then it's deployed somewhere, whether it's constructed in orbit around the moon and then landed, you know, sections, or it's actually put together on the moon, whatever that is. But the point being is that there's a deployment to a staging, and then from staging needs to go and attach to something or go to its final point of rest. And it's important to note that until it gets to its stage at rest and system A connects to system B, it's not touching that counts. It's meeting the specified acceptance where the systems go, as opposed to it not working, because then it's just, you know, you're not done yet. So there needs to be a you know, an understanding that it's not a zero probability of done until it is working and it's in a stagnant objective state. Okay, and then so then there's the deployment, execution, and then full cycle is demobilization or decommissioning and demolition. So we have to think about that too. You know, in 50 years or 60 years or however long the habitats will last, or the launch pads, you know, are they left there? Are they moved? What happens? We have to think systemically. Again, this all comes out of the master estimate. So, okay, so let's talk about number 8. And we're almost done here. Number 8 is just really, this is kind of the same structure that the data room is set up in. And there are so many lenses that are amazing on this team. And we all have, there's experts in all of these on this team. There's experts in every one of these boxes. Integrated project delivery, I can think of 3 on the team that are brilliant at it, literally brilliant at it. And you know who you are. So I would expect them to really levitate to that and take the bull by the horns and really do the peer review on that. Unit cost and historical cost application methods. We have great theorists, estimating theory specialists on this team, on the systemic team. Work breakdown structure theory, which is going to be a mix of some of the computer scientists that we have on the team and estimating professionals. You know, two-way flow data methods and all of this stuff you can read through. These are going to be really important. Now, if you go to the data room, you'll notice that through the primary or secondary or other reading, each of those categories are the files are organized this way. And so what we will need to do is we need to make sure that we have all these covered with experts, because we don't, I think we have them covered, but I want to really verify we do, because if we don't, we'll have to bring on more people on the team that are experts, because we really need this covered. All right. All right. And we cannot do this in a silo. It just it's problematic if we do that. So, all right, verification and transition state reporting. So verification and transitional state, what that means is that transitional state, which we predict, and therefore it's a it's in a field of prediction, a predictive state. And say after deployment or anytime, pre-launch, post-launch deployment, but it's moving to its resting point. And once it gets to its resting point, wherever that is, then that's a verification state where it's an objective. So therefore, it's no longer a prediction. It happened. And to put this in perspective, and I've maybe mentioned this a time or two, but I think it's a relevant point, is on Earth construction, we will say to an estimating professional will say, well, we don't necessarily need to count the screws in drywall. We know you square feet or lineal feet, because we know what the specifications say. Well, I think the team is arguing that that not only do we need on moon construction, everything is so rehearsed, everything is so dangerous and so extreme, that everything has to be planned. And we not only need to count the screws, we need to count how many times you turn the screw to get to a very specific specification. It is to a level that is hard to wrap your mind around. And there's two things that happen. We need a system, and this was a point, by the way, in the theory that was making a lot of us nervous. How do we verify? And fortunately, there's some work by Dr. Figuro, who's with NASA, and he's using a platform called G2. It's a computer program platform. He wrote a paper. It's in the primary reading, so please read it. We're trying to set up a meeting where he can come in and talk about his paper, but I'd like the team to get more up to speed on the theory on it. Anyway, quite important. And then we're also experimenting with the work breakdown structures, because NASA has very sophisticated work breakdown structure, which provides an infinite amount of opportunity for coding, a number coding, to organize where every nook and cranny in the estimate is located. We're thinking about how to even code on an estimate a place. So every little nook and cranny or every micro unit has a code where it would know as it moves to a very specific point, the computer program would know we need to verify that has occurred, and is it on or off or whatever, and then it matches what the continual predictions are. More to say about that, and I think Dr. Figuro could help on that fact as well. Design engineering, estimating, analysis, and time model interactions. There are going to be a lot of models, as there always is. And, Dr. Stephen Robinson here at UC Davis runs a NASA lab here that's funded by NASA, actually. And we were talking about a month ago or so, and he did he has like 80 hours in moonwalks or spacewalks, excuse me, and he did 4 shuttle missions. And to do it takes about 48 hours to plan a spacewalk. You just don't put on your suit and off you go. And maybe a moonwalk's even longer. I don't know. You just don't everything's planned, everything's rehearsed. So augmented reality and practicing production and things of that nature. And it's very hard, by the way, to simulate maybe the heat, but pressure in the way that it would be on the moon, and the regolith that has electrostatic charges, and it's like little razor blades, and it's mean stuff. And the lack of gravity, 1/6 Earth. So there will be our regular engineering models, but there also would be some cost analysis models as well. So think of it this way. Engineering models are typically how we do it is we do engineering models. Those are used for simulations, and then we push price in. But think of it as there's going to be separate simulation models for cost. And as probabilities start moving, so does the cost move. And so there's going to be, and we're not, the process is not suggesting to replace engineering models, absolutely not. But there will be cost models that mirror or that mimic, I guess, in process engineering models, but they're designed for cost and time. And then the next is backfeed loop two-way data flow, which is continuous two-way loop using a digital twin, which means that you have a constant prediction for observation and a rework of prediction. And every verification goes to the beginning again, and it just continually loops. The information that loops back goes through a digital twin, because we always want a live prediction to our original estimate, and then a verification, and then an actuality that goes that flows in two directions. So we always have a root cause analysis, and we always understand where the current state is at all times. This is a daunting task, and that's why there's 35 of us on this team, and I'm honored and feel very privileged to discuss these things with such an amazing group of thinkers. But this is the type of group that can solve these problems. So with that, I am looking forward to speaking with you next time. We'll try to get the invites out earlier. Now that we kind of settle on the second and fourth, we'll make that more standardized. If you have any questions, whatever, please reach out to me. Also, we're starting to do conferences on these too, and I've invited a couple of folks. And if you're interested in contributing in various conferences, or you have conferences that you do that you want to maybe do this, reach out to me. I'd love to help on that too. This is an interesting thing, and what I'm noticing is when I'm out in the community talking about this in the construction community, there's a lot of excitement about this, and rightfully so. This is literally a momentous occasion where we're thinking about things that are just a dream, right? We're actually going to be building on the moon. It's incredible. Okay, so with that said, I'll see you next meeting. And if you didn't make today, sorry you couldn't make it, but we look forward to seeing you next time. All right, thank you, and I will talk to you later.